And I remember for the first time, I was 27 was the first time I said I love my life ever. You know, it was the
Mm,
first time I was like, wow, like I love my life. I'm happy. Yeah, I had never said that before in my life.
wow.
Yeah, that was a big moment. That was a
So
big
what were you
moment.
doing? How were you transitioning away from basically sex work and the business surrounding sex work? And what were you doing? What were you doing instead? And I remember that time as being these little increments, like you're talking
Hmm.
about, of better and better and better, and feeling more and more healed and more yourself, and
Hmm.
less and less of the kind of chronic negative emotions that you described. But what were you doing? What was happening? How were you paying the bills? And what also what healing modalities were you engaged in?
Well, the healing modalities were really like the food you were feeding me, because that's when we started dating. So I was getting a lot of support from you. You were my main support team. And then seeing that there was another type of people out there that I could connect to, and you introduced me to your realm of people, which were more professionals and had their stuff going. And you were super professional and had your big empire, Black Sun, that was like,
A
whoa,
big
like,
empire.
well, it was, I
I
mean,
think of it like my little business. I had a little business, little.
oh no, Black Sun was known. You weren't just some shitty piercing studio in the corner of the street. Like you were a serious joint, and people knew about it, and you were respected. You were known internationally as a performer and as a piercer, and you had that presence, and to have someone of the way I looked at you, to your status, be interested in me was like, oh, like, like, oh, okay, well, I've got something too, perhaps, and you were
And
in a
then
transition.
at the
Hmm.
same time, we both know that way we look at other people is also bullshit. Very frequently, not always, but that's very frequently the shell.
Hmm.
That's the persona that we've created,
100%.
Right.
100%,
So
because then we got to know each other as Pierre and Veronika, not as Black Sun and Mistress Venetia.
yeah,
And completely different ball game.
yeah.
And so what I was doing, I guess, from healing, well, food, definitely food and supplements was the first thing that was really making a big difference in my life. And a semi-consistent yoga practice, that we were doing a lot of yoga classes, and you were working a lot from home. So I got into a more regular practice. So that was a big part of what I was doing. I started reading books. Frank gave me a book, Krishnamurti, The Inward Revolution, which I highly recommend. Super, super great book. And that was my first real, like, life changing, mind altering book that started to give me that language, that way to talk about that and to understand it. But I, wasn't quite there yet, and I was still filled with a lot of anger, and and didn't have any communication skills. I remember still being quite yelly and raising my voice a lot to get heard. I remember that, and and I wasn't really doing much for work for a while. I was kind of living off a few little clients that I still had here and there, until you introduced me to Frank, who had called you to do a show and you weren't available, and you were like, well, my girlfriend does shows too, you want to hire her instead. And so I became a performer doing stage shows in the BDSM community. And But he gave me the opportunity to introduce it to the vanilla world, to the norms,
Right.
not to the BDSM, which already was into that. I was be introducing it to people who weren't into it, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I was really good at that because of my chameleon and being able to dibble dabble in both worlds really easily. I was able to introduce it to them in a nice, smooth, soft, interesting, sexy way, rather than like hardcore dark BDSM. I'm just going to beat you, which is their idea of what BDSM was. And
So
Yeah.
Can I ask you in that, because I remember that time, and that was an interesting time, and you were sort of going out into a more professional world. It was like it was sexuality and sex work, but it was a very professional, very mainstream approach to it. Um, so what's under the uh, again, what's under the resume? Because I know you want to bring value, you want to help other people and influence people in the right direction. So what's the value in that? What were you bringing to people?
That's a good question. Well, I was introducing them to something different that they may or may not know about. If they did know about it and didn't have the courage to talk about it to their partners, that was opening the door for that. Um, what else?
Oh, there's a that we've talked about this before, and I know, because I know your mind is on the business side, on the like this
Mm,
is what I did, and this is the storyline, this is the timeline. But I
yeah.
know for a fact there's so much more under it, because I watched you grow into that whole process of becoming kind of doing basically healing work, like your realization you had with certain clients when you were doing dom work.
So why don't you
How
tell me from your perspective then? What do you see there?
well, I don't want to generalize. I want you to talk about your experience, because I think it was, I remember you every year it was like you were realizing um, the positive power of sexuality and relationships, and how you could bring that to people. How
Mm-hmm.
could you bring it as a um, not something like heavy and dark and secret and weird, but
Kind of normalizing it.
as something, normalizing it, and saying that, like, sexuality is important to relationships, and sexuality is important for your happiness, and you're not weird, you're into something that's different, and this is how to do it in a responsible, safe way that builds relationships, and that creates a kind of broad satisfaction in your life, rather than having like dark secrets, or having
Mm-hmm.
having sexuality that is managed in an unhealthy way, you
Right.
know so
Yeah.
that's my kind of broad take on it, and uh, I think I was doing some of that work back then as well. But what was your because what I could see from outside, uh, and knowing you personally, was this ever expanding kind of sense of like, this has meaning, this is not just work, but this has value, and
Mm-hmm.
how do we bring more real value to this kind of thing, rather than just, it's a show, it's titillating, it's weird and out there and wild. It's not just that. For some people it was. For some people it's always going to be superficial, or it's just going to um, cater to their animal desires. But for a lot of people, I think it was about. I mean, the kind of mainstreaming of kink as well at that time was important and beneficial to many people on a really deep level. So what was your take on that, like, during that process? Because I see that as an ever expanding thing that you were going through. How was that for you?
Well, I think for me, like why it's hard to kind of put my finger on it is because it happened so organically. Like I wasn't planning for any of that. It just kind of happened. It was a byproduct of just me being so comfortable in what I was doing. And I would do some work on the side with couples as well, where I would help them integrate that into their lives.
But I remember so many times you said it happened organically and almost without you noticing. But I remember during that time there would be these moments where you realized that you had really helped a person or a couple.
Yeah.
And and for me, watching you have those little realizations, experience by experience,
Hmm.
that was, you would have this kind of twinkle and this excitement, and this like, wow, like, I'm actually contributing something real. It's not just entertainment, it's not just
Hmm.
sex. People often sort of, especially in the spiritual and health communities, we like get a bit dismissive about sexuality. Um, and you had these like mini realizations constantly that it was important to people and that you were really, you were doing healing work. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was trying to draw attention to. And then I have another question that came up for me while you were telling that story. Um, how do you reconcile, and this, we're going further along the timeline with this question, so I maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but um, how do you reconcile what's going on in the health and healing community and the, for example, yoga communities, different spiritual communities that are out there, some of which you've trained in and are working in a little bit now. How do you reconcile the sort of right hand path? We don't really talk about sex, and if we do, it's definitely not kinky sex. How do you reconcile that right hand path attitude with the left hand path approach of fully integrating sexuality, including complex sexuality, including um, uh, kink and uh, gender and orientation differences, and all of those things? How do you reconcile the two paths?
Like personally,
Yeah.
by being my authentic self, by not hiding who I am, by being open to talking about that. And it's a little bit easier for me in the sense of I have a doorway to walk through quite easily through my business. I make harnesses, so that's not your typical vanilla company. People are like, oh, you make harnesses, like, well, where do you wear those, what do you do with those? And people associate those harnesses right away to BDSM. So it kind of gets brought up quite quickly. The second I start to talk about my business, then it's like, oh, what's going on here? And it's like, oh yeah, so I, come from the fetish community, and I very openly, easily talk about it. And I mean, I get mixed reactions. You'll get some people who are just kind of like, kind of stunned face, and then the room just kind of goes quiet, and they've got nothing, like they don't know how to react. um and then I see the confusion in their mind of like, oh, well, I had this idea of you before, and I liked you and I connected with you, and now you've told me this, and I have no idea how to connect with that, but I'm still the same person, you know um I don't know if that answered
So
your question.
so do you think you can be both? Do you think you can really be both at one time? That's sort of my question
I
too, because
am
there's it's
100%.
very loaded. It's very loaded in the community. In certain yoga
Mm,
communities, if you talk about this at all, they say, well, no, you don't, like, you can't talk about that here.
right.
That's like, it's almost like it's a bad version of you, and now you're like, you're letting go of that in many of
Hmm.
these communities. And then I think for that reason, a lot of people in the kink community or in other marginalized communities, they think, well, I can't really be a spiritual practitioner. I can't really be involved in the meditation community or the yoga community because
I like to
I'm
get spanked.
what I generalize as left hand path. Yeah, because I like
Right.
to get spanked, or
Yeah.
because I'm, because I'm, I have a tattoo on my neck, or because I whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, where I guess we're seeing more and more of that overlap now. But what do you
Yeah.
say? What do you say to those people? Especially, what do you say to somebody who feels marginalized and who you think might benefit from those tools?
Well, I think it's difficult for me in that sense because I've never really abided by any of that. To me, that's always been bullshit. It's just like, well, no, just be who you are, because that's been my work since that first realization. I've been doing that work for all this time. So I'm a little bit um, less in touch with that reality, in the sense that people still feel that way. Like now, to me, I'm sometimes like, I find myself being surprised to like, wow, like that's still a thing. People still they're still marginalized. They still feel like, oh no, well, I can't be part of something because I'm part of something else, or um, and to those people, I say, no, like, just be who you are. There is no one way to be. There is no one category to fit in. That's the beauty of life, is that we can experience everything. It's what we're here for. This
Yeah.
the main reason why we're here is to experience as much as we can. So come into the different community, find that, discover that part of yourself. Absolutely. There is no one community to be in. There is no one way to be. Absolutely not. It's what life is about. It's experiencing and dabbling into different worlds. That's how you discover yourself, is through experiencing as many different realms. You know, I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have hadn't I experienced that world of BDSM. That taught me so much about myself, about my sexuality, about empowering myself. Like, that gave me my power back, even though it was a false sense of power. It was the beginning of it, and it ignited it. And if I hadn't have had that experience, had I just fallen into perhaps yoga and meditation right away, it wouldn't have been the same experience. It wouldn't have been better or worse, but it would have been different, you know? So no, I mean, I welcome everyone to dive into the different communities. I think it's so important. So important.
What I get a lot from people is that my impression is that many people think that the more I expand into other realms, into meditation or spiritual practice, or um, uh, even something like fitness or whatever, that um, maybe I'm abandoning the communities I was part of in the past. So, do you see yourself as changing communities because you need to, and that's what is necessary for you right now? Or do you see your practice as one that integrates these other? Do you want to bring everyone into the fold in a way, and teach your experience? Or do you feel like you kind of transitioned to a different place, and this no longer fits for you anymore?
Well, I definitely um am less part of other communities, but like, I'm still, even though I'm no longer working in the BDSM community, that's still a huge part of my community. It's still a huge part of my friends. I still attend some of the parties. I still promote some of my products to them. So I am still part of that community. I'm maybe a little bit less part of it because I'm not a professional in that community, where I was super present before. I'm less present now, and because um, it doesn't serve me as much because of where I'm deciding to put my focus on.
Right.
So I think it's a transition, you know, like we do what serves us in each moment, you know. Like, I'm here now. I'm part of the Medellin community because this is what I need now. I'm here. I need to know more about the country that I'm in. I need to learn the language. I need to create a community here in this moment. So we're part of the communities that we need to be in the moments that we need to be, in order to serve us and benefit and exchange in those moments. You know, if you stay in the same community forever, well, then you plateau at some point. You know, it's by discovering new communities that growth happens, where you discover new
Mhm.
things and you learn new aspects, and you communicate and connect with different people. That's growth, that's evolution.
Mhm.
So I think that's part of life as well. That doesn't mean that you're abandoning your other community. And if you do, like,
Mhm.
I kind of, in a sense, you know, when I decided to leave my Haitian boyfriend, and I cut that community. At that point, I did abandon that community. And I remember it being difficult because there was the kids, you know, who I'm godmother to one of the kids, and I had
Mhm.
to cut them out of my life. And it was one of the hardest things that I had to do, you know, and I felt a lot of regret, I felt a lot of shame, I felt a lot of guilt, but I know that I needed to do it because that community was not serving me anymore, and it was keeping me in things that I didn't want to be in, and I needed to do something different, and not be better, or I just needed something different. And so I purposely cut that community out of my life to connect with another community that was serving me better at that point. So there's moments that we do need to cut communities out of our lives if they're not doing anything for us. And there's other moments where we just shift and become more present in a different community, but we can still keep contact and presence in a different community. I don't believe that we need to be part of just one community. I mean, that's a sect. That's
Right.
not what we're doing here, you know?
Right. Yeah. So the goal is to be expansive and to integrate
Absolutely.
everyone as much as possible.
Absolutely.
And the I think learnings and awakenings are kind of meant to be shared as well. And I think
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So what is it that you want to bring to people now? What's the kind of you know cutting edge of what you're trying to bring to people now?
It's a good question. Well, I think that because of my past, my experiences, because of my experience in so many different communities, I can hopefully, people from these different communities can relate to me more easily. And I'm not just from one school of thought. And I see that as an advantage. And I see that as being more personable and being able to connect with more people. And I want to take advantage of that. um, and and help the people who are part of one community who want to come into the other and don't know
Right.
quite how to make that transition. I want to be that bridge. Be like, no, no, you're okay. Like, come, we're good.
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm one of you. You're one of me. I'm in this community too. You're fine.
Right.
You
Right.
know. Um, so that's what I want to do, is just kind of like help people who see this realm of healing as something like too intense and too spiritual or too hippy dippy for them, and bring it to them in a different way that benefits them, that has the right language surrounding their school of thought, because we all need healing.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what
So,
community you're part of.
so who is your sort of optimal target audience or target clientele right now? I know you're open to everyone, but who are you trying to reach most importantly, and who do you think you can benefit the most with the work you're doing now?
Well, definitely women. I think is that like the number one, because I'm a woman. I can only speak through my experience. I'm not gonna tell a man about man problems. I have no idea. It's not my thing. So for me, I want to talk from experience, and it's not about being a teacher. And I don't think I know all the answers, and I want to lead the way. I just want to talk about my experience and the things that benefited me, and and hopefully point to some directions, for people to find their own way. So women with trauma, with sexual trauma, with physical abuse, um, women with issues around sexuality, and women coming um, from communities where they're not feeling supported, and coming into feeling supported, and not just from other people, but finding that support within yourself. Like that was a big one for me, where I always looked outside, looked to my partners for love and for support and for confidence. And now finally coming, like, this is my power. This is where I'm really feeling I'm coming into my power, is where I'm doing that for myself.
Hmm.
I'm, for the first time, being the provider of love in my life, being the provider and the inspiration for confidence and courage. I'm doing that for myself. Wow, like that's fucking cool. So now I feel like that's my power that I really come into by discovering that I can do that for myself, and really for real being independent. I've always considered myself an independent woman, but when I look back, I've always held on to other people. I've always needed that support of other people to get me through. um, and finally, for the first time, I'm the provider in my life. and that feels so good. And that's what I want to help people find for themselves, is their own power.
Wow,
Mm.
very nice. So what does that look like when somebody comes to you to kind of start this work? What are you doing? What does it look like?
I'm still kind of figuring that out. It's all kind of coming together again organically. I'm very big on like organic, you know. So what I've been doing is just kind of cataloging. Cataloging, is that the right word?
Cataloging? Cataloging?
Cataloging, thank you. Yeah, I was like, there's something extra in there. Cataloging um, my learnings, my own lessons, the things that have really resonated with me and that have really helped me gain perspective on my own life and my own growth, and starting to maybe do some workshops around that. I mean, my end goal is to have retreats. You know, I'd love to do some retreats, have people come in for a couple of days and we do some work together, and I would have some other people hosting it with me. Like, that's the end goal. So bringing that back a bit, doing some workshops in groups. I like doing one-on-one stuff. I might do some of that as well. But I really enjoy group settings with many women. I find that super beneficial, where we all kind of bring our perspective. Because again, it's not about me. I'm not, you know, I don't want to be the teacher. You know, it's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to point in different directions and show people like, you have the answers. You know, I'm just going to help you kind of, I'm going to shed light on them, and then you're going to figure it out. So the more people we are in the room, the more kind of flashlights are kind of flowing around the room, and the more we can all kind of support each other, because I'm part of that as well, where it's beneficial for me as well. Every time I'm helping someone, or helping someone discover an aspect, it's a reflection. I'm also like, oh shit, I'm also kind of saying it to myself. And I've really attuned myself to that now, and I'm realizing that every single time I have that conversation with someone, it's just shining the light back on me, and that I'm growing from that as well. So it's a mutual learning and mutual healing that I'm interested in participating in, and organizing. Like, that's what I say. I'm just kind of the organizer, you know. I bring the people, we have a theme, I have the structure around, and then I let the magic happen amongst us,
Right,
you know.
right. Yeah, and I've seen you do that before over the years without you even realizing that these little moments where after the fact you realize that you've uh, created a healing or created a positive expansion for people, or allowed them to let go of junk and feel a kind of lightness and
Mm-hmm.
healing in themselves. And you've done it organically and unintentionally, and you're just someone that creates a space for people to come into where they feel free and safe, and where this kind of magic can unfold.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if I can say, I think you're in a perfect position to work with women who have been through some of the things that you've been through, and that's crystal clear for me, is you doing especially group work with people,
Mm-hmm.
because I've watched you do it before. I've watched you do it, uh, like I said, unintentionally, before you chose this path you're on now. It just happened. It was just
Mm-hmm.
something that happened organically, and I know there are a lot of people out there that have benefited from the sort of space holding and space creating work that you've done in the past. Um, I know you have a long list of fans out there and people who've benefited from you, and I think now is the time to make it conscious and intentional,
Yeah,
right? To say
absolutely.
this is what I'm doing, and now I'm consciously welcoming people into this space that I'm creating.
Absolutely. That's the goal. That's the intention for sure. And I'm still going to continue, I still have my company, Star Creations, which I'm going to continue to work with. But even that, I'm shifting to grow with me,
Right.
because I'm growing into this work as well. I see the benefit of bringing that to my already existing clients for Star Creations as well, because there was this moment where just like, we're making harnesses and it's, sexy attire, all good. And then we get to this moment where this more voluptuous woman comes and, oh, I'd like to try this on. And it's like, oh, well, I can make it custom for you, but I don't have your size. Because I don't come from a design background, everything was made to kind of fit me more or less, because I'm kind of putting it on myself and kind of figuring it out. Everything I've learned, I've kind of learned on the fly. So I don't know how to do sizing. Like, I've never done this before, and then seeing that one woman who answered me by like, oh, that's what everyone else says, thanks, and just kind of walked away. And I was just like, I put myself in her shoes for a moment, and I was like, man, that sucks. Like, every woman deserves to feel sexy and to have something sexy that fits her, and that day, like, I went back home and I was like, all right, we got to fit everyone. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I got to figure it out. And I found someone with some design background who was able to help me size, and we started making plus size. And then having those same women walking by and kind of looking at her booth, and of course everything's on a plastic mannequin and they're all super tiny, and then hearing them being like, oh, this is for like the skinny bitches, and then being like, no, excuse me, like, I can fit you, and then them kind of being like, you can't fit me. We're like, oh yeah, I can fit you. And then taking these pieces on, putting it on them and feeling them, like their energy kind of like not feeling super good about themselves, and just kind of like feeling a bit shy and awkward, and they've never really put a harness on, because they've never really had anything that's fit their body. And then I find the right piece and I put it, and that moment of looking at them in the mirror, where they're looking at themselves in the mirror and they're like, damn, I look good,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
they grow. Like, I see them in that moment growing. I see their confidence being jacked up in that moment. That's the essence of my company.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
funny because that was my next question. I was going to ask you, that was my next question. You went right into it. So
yeah,
I'll let you go.
I mean, that's the moment when I realized, again, just like that moment when I was doing the domination, just like, okay, we're doing, sex work, pro dom, blah, blah, blah. And that moment of knowing like, oh, I'm actually helping someone. I had that same moment in the company of like, okay, we're not just making harnesses. We're boosting people's confidence. We're giving them their power back. We're giving them their self-confidence back. We're doing so much more. And that's what Star Creations is about. And that's what I'm growing, is that aspect of it, and bringing services and added value to support that even more. And that's going like right in line with where I am right now and wanting to do that healing work. It's just like perfectly aligning. So I want to bring that aspect to Star Creations, where we're going to be offering services and doing fun workshops, like reinventing the striptease. Like the striptease, when you think about it, it's like the man stripping for the woman, stripping for the man. Well, that's bullshit. You're doing it like, you need to feel confident about yourself. You need to do it for yourself. You need to do it because you want to feel good, and you want to like take your power back. The person you're doing it for comes second. If you're in your power and you find you're beautiful and you're hot, the person watching you is absolutely going to love it. But if you're doing it for them and you're kind of like, yeah, about it, and what is that person going to want me to do, and I'll do that for them, well, it's not going to be that great. You're going to fumble, and the person will be like, yeah, okay, thanks, babe. But like, not so much. It's about you, and that's kind of what I want to teach. And us women need to reprogram our minds, everything that we've been taught, and the way that we see ourselves, and the way that society tells us that we need to look and need to act, and all of that. It's all bullshit. We need to reprogram all of that. And that's what I want to help do. And I think that I can do that with through the aid of my beautiful handmade products that we have as well, because that's a gateway. It just kind of opens the door to that, and parallel to that, for the people who want to go deeper, then I'll offer some other things that we can dive in deeper, and that'll be me personally as whatever title I mentor. I don't want to be like, again, like the teacher or the healer. I mean, I'm just a person kind of going through my own journey, but yeah, I'd like to go in deeper as well with people on another aspect, but that'll be separate from Star Creations. Star Creations will really dive into around the sexuality, the body confidence, taking your power back. And then the people who have some more serious trauma, that want to dive in a little bit deeper and do some serious growing, well, then I can support that on the other side.
Come back to Star Creations again for a minute and tell me a little bit about the inclusivity again. You talked about body types, size differences, and different bodies. Tell me a little bit more, because I know we've talked before about your sort of inclusivity goals and even sort of policies. And this is from a heart level. This comes from your heart, not just from a business perspective. So tell me a little bit about that.
So not just body inclusivity, but gender inclusivity as well is something that's been really important to us. Just, looking these, again, it's like these communities, like, to me, I'm just like, man, I don't even see, like, I look at someone and I don't even see that in them, this category that they've put themselves in, well, oh, I'm a plus size, or, oh, well, I'm trans, or I'm they, like, to me, we're just people. We're all just humans, and everyone's beautiful, and I want to be able to support all of them, and yes, we're a little bit more women focused, and by women as people identifying as women as well. And I would love to have a they as part of my core team, because, again, I can only speak from my experience. So there's a lot of things that I would love to be able to support them with, but that I haven't personally experienced, and I don't feel comfortable being a spokesperson for that movement. So that's actually something that we've been looking for actively, is of having either a transgender person or someone who has just experienced that, from being a man, becoming a woman, and that journey. I would love to be able to support that community as well. What else can I say?
You're dealing with clothing and accessories that lean toward the feminine, but in every way are inclusive to anyone who wants to get into clothing and accessories, sexy clothing and accessories that lean towards the feminine.
Absolutely.
That's what you're trying to promote in an inclusive
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, the
Well,
last thing
I'm trying to articulate it coming from, like, I'm a non-fashion person, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to articulate it from that place.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. The last thing you're going to find in Star Creations is discrimination. Like, we have stuff for men as well. But I feel like I just really want to focus on the more feminine aspect, because it's what I can talk about. It's where I come from. I just have more to offer in that realm. And we're an all women run team. The whole company is all women except my graphic dude, my website guys. That's it. Everybody else, all my designers, all my my seamstresses, and my team, my sales team, my marketing, like, everyone. I speak like I'm a giant company. It's like 4 people, but everyone, we're all women, and I like that. I really like that aspect, and I wanna continue doing that. You know, I think it's important. It's nice to have that community and that support. And I know for me, like that's something I'm coming from as well, is the opposite of that, you know, like in school with the being bullied, and even being like with my gang where I was feeling like I was part of a community, but there was so much jealous and competition between the women. We didn't support each other. We were all, you know, jealous and catty to each other,
Mm-hmm.
because we were fighting for the attention of the men, because we weren't the only women. You know, the men had multiple women, so we had to be the best, and we had to, you know, so it was always, women for me have always been a competition. There's never been a support with women. That's like, that came in my like late 20s, you know, where I like found that for the first time, like women's circles, like how
Mm-hmm.
intimidating is that, you know? But then when I found that for the first time, and like feeling that support and that genuine support and genuine acceptance from these other women was like, wow, like just sitting there amongst these women with saying nothing was healing,
Mm.
you know. And that's what I want to introduce to people as well. It's just this beautiful community of support. And since I've had that, since I've brought that into my life, it's helped me support myself. It's helped me stop judging myself, you know, having these women around me that have genuinely supported me and rooted for me, and accepted me the way I am, has been the first step of helping me accept myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. Very nice.
Mm.
Um, so maybe a couple of odd kind of out there questions. Uh, if you could finish the following sentence, um, I'm most powerful when.
Mm. Yeah, most powerful, I feel like, I should say the first thing that comes to mind, but I feel like I want to like think about it. The first thing that came to mind was, I'm most powerful when I'm with my team. Um, because yeah, when I'm with my girls, like we are unstoppable. You know, I feel that support. I feel that power, because we're all like um, on the same path. We all have the same vision, and that feels really empowering to me. Um, but again, like we were talking about Start Creation, so that's my Start Creations mind, that has that answer. Um, and I guess for Veronika, um, I'm most powerful when I'm being myself. You know, when I'm truly just being myself, when I'm not spending so much energy trying to be what I think people want me to be. That takes a lot of energy. They don't realize,
Wow.
but it does. So I'm most powerful when I'm being my authentic self.
Okay. Um, is it it is safe for me to let go of?
Hmm. The fear of not being accepted the way I am kind of supports that, you know, because for so long I played this role of being someone else, and that was, there's a comfort in that. You know, I know people are going to like me because I'm being who they want me to be. So being my authentic self is scary. I don't know if people will like who I am and will accept me for the way I am. So yeah, it's safe for me to let go of that now, and to not worry about how people will take me, because I'm there for myself. I've got my back. So it's safe for me to let go of that fear now.
Mhm. Wow, that's powerful. I like that.
Thank you.
Um, and this is off on another tangent, but how do you see your relationships differently now? What, like, in terms of both intimate and close friendships? Um, what's changed about, like, what are you looking for with intimate and close friendships, and also intimate relationships going into the future? Sort of where, because you're in a transition, you're in a place of
Mm-hmm.
transition, and I know you had
Mm-hmm.
a long relationship that ended recently. So
Mm-hmm.
where do you see yourself going?
A lot of things came up there. Um, so what I'm looking for is authenticity. Like that's a big word that comes back up for me for sure. Someone that can accept me truly the way I am, and someone who is comfortable truly being themselves as well, who is working towards um, deepening that knowledge and continuing to discover themselves, growth. Like that's what I'm looking for, because I'm constantly growing. Like there's no end to this for me. This is the theme of my life. So I need a partner that is interested in doing that work as well. Um, and not just a partner, but my friends as well. If my friends are just kind of like content with their lives the way they are, then there's going to be a moment where we just don't have anything in common anymore, where it's going to be hard for us um, to stay on the same path. So there's that. One of the things that came up as well when you were asking me the questions, I think that the thing that people say that I hear the most often lately, um, from the people who do see the change in me, one of the first things that they say is the communication. I think that's where I've grown the most. Is, oh, you're a lot easier to talk to now.
Mm,
Um, and I think that comes from as well. My big lesson this year was expectations, realizing how much I was setting expectations, like holding myself at the highest standards, and I still do that. I have the highest expectations of myself, but realizing that I was doing that to the people around me as well. It's like, well, you want to be my friend, well, you better get this shit done, and you better do it this way. And I don't just have these expectations of people, I hold them accountable to these expectations that I've set. Like, how crazy is that? you know so realizing that, and actively working very hard to catch myself when I do that and to remove that, has changed so many of my relationships, and has opened them and has allowed them to be their authentic selves, where they're not having to meet my expectations. That's not them being themselves. That's
mm,
them trying to be who I want them to be, which is the opposite of what I say I want.
mm-hmm,
So realizing that has been has allowed me to really change my relationships with people, and to like bring down the pressure, and just bring some authenticity to our relationships.
mm-hmm.
Mm,
Nice.
yeah.
Very nice. I think we're rapidly approaching the end
Mm,
of our talk. It's been a good one, long. Um,
mm-hmm.
is there anything else you think we need to touch on?
I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff. No, I think it's a good summary, a little bit more, I'd say, even than a summary. We went into depth about a few subjects. I feel like it's well balanced. Talked a little bit about, where I came from, where I am, where I'm going. I definitely would love to, deepen certain subjects in different talks, and I'd like to leave room for that to happen. Um, but yeah, I think it was good. Thank you so much for taking this time with me, for accepting to do this interview with me. I really appreciate it. I'm really happy that you were the one to do it. I think that it was nice for you to be able to bring your perspective to it. So thank you for that. Thank you for your authenticity. And yeah, I'm happy we did this. It's good. It was good for it's nice for me to kind of see that path as well, that it for me proves to myself like that I'm on the right path, and that I'm, and helps me gain confidence as well, as seeing like I've been doing this for a while, like I'm only now really structuring it and being like, okay, this is how I want to do things, but I've been doing the work for a long time. So it kind of helps me gain a little bit of confidence in those moments where I'm like, oh, this is new, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I have my moments of being self-critical and lacking a bit of confidence. This helps me realize that, that I've been doing the work for a while, and that I just need to keep doing what I'm doing organically, and drop in. So thank you so
Nice.
much for your time.
Very welcome. Very welcome. I feel
Um,
really genuinely honored to do this little talk with you, because as I said, I think in the beginning, you're one of the people that I've seen on this come from a really complicated and challenging place, but been on this path of growth and expansion just continuously since I've known you. And then sort of watching you come out here. It's really beautiful, beautiful to watch.
Thank
And
you.
I look forward to seeing more of it.
Thank you for all your help, and thank you for your continued
So
support.
you're very
Absolutely.
welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for everyone who's stuck around as well through this long talk. I know it was long-winded, and we definitely went over the time we were expecting to do this, but I hope it was interesting for everyone watching. And if you have any comments, any questions, anything that you'd like me to address further, please feel free to drop your questions and comments in the box below, and reach out to me personally if you want to do any personal work. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.